will be curated by Mr. Ajay Verma, Global Practice Head, Sustainable Smart World, L&T Technology Services Limited. Ajay Verma is a practice head with L&T Technologies India with over 2 decades of experience in business and IT consulting, including new business development, management consultant, product engineering, and many, many more. He has authored a book on the digital era, Time to Reinvent the Target Operating Model, which is available on Amazon, Kindle, Flipkart, White Falcon, with multiple thought leadership papers in global forums. Ladies and gentlemen, with a very, very huge round of applause, let's welcome Mr. Ajay Verma, Smart Energy Practice Head with L&T Technologies.
All right. You can hear me, right? So, it works, right? So I've been hearing about the first session by Mr. Rajesh Banshal and the panel discussions, right? And what I heard, and I think everybody knows about this, right, is one size fits all does not work, right? We need to look from 4 different stakeholders. One is the consumers, second one is the government, third one is the regulators, right? So we need to look from all these, the stakeholders and the utilities, right? So there are 4 stakeholders. We need to understand what they really want, right? Utilities have been struggling with this whole OPEX side of the business, right? In terms of bringing the OPEX cost down. And whatever the initiatives they are running, whether it's in a smart meter or any other, in terms of building the command control center, it's all about how do we run the process in a more efficient way to bring down the OPEX cost down. If you look at the regulatory, they want to push their own agenda in terms of really understanding what they really want, right? So I think the overall message what I heard from these last 3 discussions is one size fits all does not work. I'll go into more practicality and also I'll go into more technical, but I'll try to be more brief because I've been given 20 minutes, right? So I'll try to be more brief. And I'll be happy to discuss this in more details after this, my presentation. So the topic which I have selected, I know everybody is talking about smart meter and what has been going. A lot of smart meters have been implemented in India and across the globe. We talk about AMI 1.0, we talk about AMI 2.0. But I think many of these smart meters across the world, I see there is a lot of failure too. Because at the end of the day, if you look at the smart meter, it becomes so complex, and specifically around the data volume, specifically around the integrations, right? So my whole agenda for today's discussion is, the kind of work we have been doing, and as an L&T, we have done a lot of work in India, across the globe. I just thought I'll talk about in terms of what are the secret for the success, in terms of the lessons learned, in terms of the best practices, right? And again, one size fits all does not work, but many of these will be taken away as a part of the lessons learned, right? So before I go, excuse me. Can you put yours? Sorry. Yeah. So I think before I go into the main detail, I think I'll just touch in terms of who we are, right? So, if you look at LTTS, we call it as an L&T technology. We are part of the big L&T group, right? Big conglomerate. And our focus is on across the value chain, right? When we talk about across the value chain, we focus on conventional power, we focus on renewable power utilities and energy transformation. The message which I wanted to give in terms of what we do is basically, we work on the engineering side of the business too, right? We are a pure player engineering company. While we work with the OEMs, we work with the OEMs across the globe, whether it's a Schneider, whether it's a Lightron, whether it's a Landis+Gyr. We work with the utilities to do the design of their turbines, the power plants. We do the mechanical design, we do the electrical design. At the same time, we do a lot of SI work, not just from the distribution perspective, but also from the transmission perspective, from a generation perspective, right? I think the one way we differentiate ourselves is we are not just the IT company, we are the OT company. We bring the engineering business, knowledge and we try to bring and club this together. Just thought of I'll give you where our focus area is, right? And again, this will give you the perspective also where this industry is going. So if you look at utilities, right, they are going through a lot of transformation, either in terms of the smart meter, either in terms of the putting the sensors, making the digital grid more smarter, the grid more smarter, we call it as a digital grid. But there is a lot of concerns around, safety and security, right? Whether it's a cyber attack, whether we are getting exposed to the internet, right? So how do we, when we talk to the utilities in India or across the globe, what we hear a lot about, there's a lot of concerns around safety and security. And when we talk about the safety and security, it's not just about cyber and OT security. We also talk about how do we put the perimeter security? How do we put the right CCTVs? How do we do the video management analytics, right? In terms of the nuclear power plants, in terms of their substations, right? A lot of work is happening in that area, and we work with the utilities in those areas. How do we set up the whole command control centers with the right policies, with the right, the process in place so that we are more secure? When we look into the operations, right? Utility is going through the transformation. At the end of the day, they want to have the better operation in place. But the utility is also concerned about how do I run this new model of the transformation, right? There is a lot of concern. And that's the reason while we build this smart operation for the customer, and there is a lot of focus on analytics, right? A lot of people talked about data is oil, and I say data is not oil, data is a commodity right now, right? At the end of the day. Unless you create the insights and the values to run your business, that is where the data becomes an asset, right? So there is the focus on not just building the operation, but also how do I run the operation on the utilities' behalf before we transition to them. And what we have seen is, in terms of the analysis, we, based on the knowledge and experience we bring to the table, in terms of meeting the SLAs, in terms of meeting the KPIs, we are at least 20% of the cost if utilities try to run the operation on their behalf, right? With the right tools, with the right application, with the right platform. That is where the focus area is. Advanced metering infra, smog, virtual power plant. A lot of people touched about the VPP, which is not coming. I think India is a little bit away from the VPP, but there is a lot of transition from the utilities perspective where they are committing to 30%, 40% on the renewal has to come from the renewal, right? And there is a lot of initiative coming on the demand response, on the virtual power plant. How do I create the right ecosystem? So whether utility, the consumers also to be part of this overall ecosystems. And I think Mr. Rajesh Vanchal talked about, at the end of the day, whatever we do, it's for the consumers, right? They need to be part of the ecosystems. There is a lot of initiative happening on the virtual power plant, ADMS, energy analytics, and then services and technology and partner ecosystems. So just wanted to give you the context, right? At the end of the day, it's all about net zero, energy transition, and whatever we talked about. Again, I'm not going into this, but you can understand when we look at the AMI reference architecture, we break down into 3 parts. The last one is the DISCOM, this side is the communications and the meter, and the middle portion is where we talk about the whole control room. Either it's an AMI control room, NOC, SOC, everything, we talked about that. Now, so what I thought is I'll start with some of the lessons learned, some of the key learnings, right? And again, these are not the exhaustive list, but what I thought I'll just touch some of the lessons learned, right? So if you look at MDMS, which is a critical applications or platform in the overall smart meter landscape, right? And specifically in India, the kind of volume we are looking at, I don't see anywhere in the world we can look into that numbers, right? We are talking about 6 million, 7 million, 8 million, 9 million, right? Again, based on the population, I don't see anybody is looking into that kind of number. Now, how do I have the right MDMS architecture in place? It's a very critical, because there is a lot of failure is happening in MDMS. Whether I go into the COTS, whether it's going to bespoke, but how do I scale up? Because we are talking about 15 minutes interval data, 96 intervals data per meter, load profile, monthly profile. How do I scale to support 10 million and 8 million and 9 million meters? It's a very critical system because the data is the commodity or oil, because everything is sitting in your MDMS, how do I use that data to create the more insights? And again, don't get me wrong, but HES is, I see HES is also becoming a single point of failure, and it's becoming a little bit more in terms of the commodity. Again, from India perspective, I see. And what I see is there is a lot of, a lot of lessons learned in terms of how can I have multiple HES system. It's always good to have a universal HES system, but just to avoid this single point of failure, we are talking about a multiple HES system to facilitate the scalability. Selecting the right network systems, right? Regulatory changing, how do I ensure that, how do I monitor the regulatory changes, right? And how do I meet their requirements? Robust security in terms of the access control, maintenance and support, because there is always a, the BAPT is happening, there is always a security patch, there is always a maintenance patch. How do I plan that? Because what happens is, what we have seen is you plan to apply one patch, it breaks something, right? How do I plan the overall maintenance exercise? It's very, very critical because, things can break anytime. It becomes a nightmare when we talk about the overall landscape and the integration. Specifically, the DISCOM ownership, right? How do I get the requirements signed off? How do I get the UAT signed off? It's very, very critical. We need to have a game plan, right? Where we need DISCOM's support. Cyber security checks and effective change management strategy, right? So these are the key lessons learned, right? Based on the work, what we have been doing, in India and across the globe. I just thought I'll put that so that it gives you a perspective in terms of what are the areas we need to look into and how we plan the journey together. Based on the lessons learned, right? So if you look at, again, planning, it's not a rocket science, but I just wanted to summarize this. If you look at the network coverage, right? Many people, I see, they talk about whether I go with RF or cellular, right? Whether I go with NB IoT. I think it's all about, your requirement. Don't just go with one network. Go in a hybrid mode. Understand, if you look at outside India, I think the whole journey started with, because the data plan used to be very expensive in US and Canada, right? So they selected to go with RF. And what I've seen is, rural area, they go with, cellular, and urban area, they go with RF. But what I want to emphasize is select the right technology in terms of the network. Suitable data rates, because we talk about speed, we talk about low latency, right? We are getting the meter data. At what speed can I get the real time, low latency, the speed? Cloud, I think that is one of the failure point I've seen everybody is, facing right now. Can I control my cloud bill? It's very, very important. Can I have the right cloud sizing based on the requirements? Can I archive the data beyond 3 years? Can I archive the data beyond 1 year? Can I archive the data, it's all about compute storage. Can I have the cloud sizing in the right way? Can I control my cloud bill? Can I use the IS service, infrastructure as a service, or PaaS service, or SaaS service? Long-lasting resilience, right? Specifically when we talk about the meters, we are doing so many command control use cases, right? You need to have the low power, the battery is there, right? You need to run that battery for 10, 12 years if you look at the meter life cycle, right? Security, cyber security is another concern which we talked about this. FOTA, whether, the firmware over the air, how do I upgrade this? Rapid deployment, we all talked about what we have seen is, how do I plan the rapid deployment, right? How many meters I can deploy per month? How my application is strong enough to support those meters, because as soon as you start deploying the meters, the meter will start reporting out the data. Can I have the right application landscape in place to start consuming the data and start giving what I really want? Reliability, right? I think this is one of the, I think many people touched about in terms of the data, right? How do I create the right insights to basically, balance the grid? It's very, very important, because at the end of the day, if you look at the grid, I cannot run all the disconnect at the same time. Consumers are not paying. Can I disconnect all the consumers, let's say 1 lakh consumers or 2 lakh consumers, right? My grid will become unstable, right? How do I plan in a staggered way? So how do I create the insights and plan and balance the grid accordingly? My EVs are coming into the picture. Behind the meter, below the meter, how do I plan? And then total cost of ownership. I think, Mr. Rajesh Bansal has talked about 10,000 per meters, right, into tax, capex and opex. I think how do I make sure that my total cost of ownership stays? It's very, very important. Moving to the next slide, and I think these are a little bit technical, but I just thought, really giving a perspective that what are the choke points, right? Specifically when you look into the AMI landscape. It's an integration. It's very, very critical. Integration become a nightmare. We are talking about multiple integration, different kind of integration. How do I plan my right integration method? For remote reconnect, disconnect, maybe I need, web service, real time. Maybe for ping, maybe I can manage with the JMS service, right? For load profile, I can go with the file base or JMS base. So there are options. Please think about it. What is the right integration method? Because today you'll start with 1 lakh meters or 0.1 million meters. Tomorrow you need to scale up to support, let's say, 0.5 million meters or 5 million meters. How do I select the right integration method? It's very, very important. Database, right? It's one of the failure point is the database, because we talk about 15 minutes interval, 96 intervals into 5 million meters. Just think about, so how do I, and again, this is more than IRCTC and many other website or application we talk about. How do I use the right IOPS? It's very, very important from a database perspective. How do I partition the database? Again, technical, but think from a perspective that because you need to plan. Because when we talk about the volume, you need to plan. How do I partition the database? How do I archive the data? How do I keep the database free for the real-time interaction? Batch processing, right? Because there is a lot of batch processing is happening on the MDM side, on the HES side. How do I coordinate, right? How do I prioritize the batch? Maybe for remote reconnect, maybe for the monthly load, daily load, alarms, disconnect. I want to prioritize based on my importance. I cannot run all the batch process at the same time. It will crash, because at the end of the day, your technology is also limited. Your database and your everything is limited. How do I plan? How do I prioritize? Infrastructure, right? Whether I go to the cloud managed, NFS for the better IOPS, right? Everybody is getting into the, again, the whole DB partition. Deployment, right? I know we talk about active-active DR or active-passive DR, but maybe we are just using DR more as a business continuity, right? How do I move to the active DR for the read operation and reporting? Can I identify some of the use cases where I can just leverage the DR for reporting and operation? Very, very important. I know these are more technical, but I can tell you, if you start planning, I think this will give you a very comfort level when we talk about the overall journey from a smart meter perspective. Moving on. So again, I'm not going into the details, it's a more technical, but when we talk about MDMS, how do I scale up? Very, very important, right? So you have an option of horizontal scaling, you have an option of vertical scaling, right? How do I scale up in an iterative manner, right? How do I fine tune? Because we talk about 80 lakh meters, maybe 10 million meters, right? How do I scale up in a rollout in a very iterative manner? Can I add more CPUs? Can I add more RAMs from a vertical scaling perspective? Can I add more rack nodes to the rack? Rack is a real application server, Oracle provides and many other database technology provides. Can I use those technology to scale up from a horizontal perspective, from a vertical perspective? It's very, very important. Same thing, in prepaid, because we have our own prepaid application. So what we do, there are options to scale up, horizontal scaling or a vertical scaling. Can I use the Kubernetes cluster, right? Can I add the pods so that it becomes a auto scaling? Because cloud, one of the reasons we go to the cloud is auto scale. They can give you the infrastructure. They can add the nodes on the fly, right? I don't want to consume everything at the first go. As soon as my the demand goes, I can add up the infrastructure accordingly. So that's again just giving you a perspective in terms of how do we scale the MDMS, how do we scale the the prepaid, because these are the two critical applications in the overall landscape. How do we scale up the other applications too? I just thought I'll end this slide in interest of the time. Again, in terms of the key messages, right? So if you look at in terms of the key messages, and again, I just try to jot down some of them. Very, very important, what is the end goal? One is the consumer perspective, regulatory perspective, utilities perspective, and the government perspective. Plan the end goal. What is the volume we are thinking of envisaging to support? What kind of landscape we are applying to support? What is the integration method we need to have? The operating model is changing. The utilities operating model is changing. How do I give them the right comfort level to run their operation? How do I give the consumers the right applications, the right mobile app to have a seamless customer journey? It's very, very important. At the end of the day, when Mr. Rajiv Bansal was talking about, at the end of the day, consumers or taxpayers are paying. I need to give them a seamless customer journey. Digital. When you talk about customer journey or business process, think about the digital technology. What is the right digital technology, digitization in terms of making the customer journey and business process smooth? Focus on integrated approach. Don't look into the silos, MDM and HES. Look into the meter to the right communication to the HES to MDM, and then integration with the billing systems and so on and so forth. Your customers and employee expectations are changing very fast, right? Why I'm getting the smart meter? Not to get my bill up or down, right? My expectations are changing. It's not one size fits all. It's not the game. The new techniques may be required, from a new technology. And last but not least is a measure. See, just sum this up. See, utilities at the end of the day across the globe, they are going through a tough time. Either India has a different story, but outside India also they are having a different story. Their ratings are going down. They used to be very AAA plus rating. Everybody used to invest, but now that's not the case. I think the model is changing. We need to help the utilities how, in the overall journey, they can become a aggregator. They can become an Uber of the world, right? It's not just about electricity, gas and power, because that becoming a commodity. Can I give more offer more thing to the customer in terms of home energy management system? And let's move from commodity business to the service-based industry. That is where utilities have to survive. It's all about services, the best services I can offer to the customer, and that is the way they can change their perception, because it's not about one size fits all. I need to give the best services to the customer and move away from the utilities, the core business, commodity business to the service-based industry. That is where the whole thing we need to think about. That is where the whole world has to go. Thank you so much.